Welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Fowler, President of the Apartment Owners Association of California, and today we're going to be talking about how to turn a 1031 exchange into a DST. And so we have an expert that's going to be sharing with us. So before we get started with that, just a few announcements. Now there is closed caption on YouTube, so high five to YouTube for getting that going on their side. And also, we had another political action roundtable meeting yesterday in San Diego, and we will have another double-header event in San Diego on October 27th, and that'll be the first part will be Franco Simone, landlord-tenant attorney. He'll be speaking about just the creating a lease and the other addenda that you need with that. So that'll be in person. And then immediately after that, there'll be another one about asset protection. And Larry Oxenham will be bringing that. And so again, two experts in their field will be sharing. That'll be awesome. That's free for members. And all of the in-person ones, it's free for members. And usually $39 if you're not a member. So that's available to everybody. And then there is the other one that, well, actually there's so many more, sorry. So I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, on September 19th, in Oakland, we have landlord-tenant attorney Richard Beckman that's going to be speaking about how you can avoid procedural mistakes in eviction actions. And there are so many ways to make mistakes. And so that's one that everybody that's in the area will want to attend and just make sure they have everything working right with that. And then September 26th in Santa Clara, we'll be talking about maintenance of rental units and what the landlord's rights are to be able to inspect that. And again, if you're in the area, you'll want to check that out. And then, of course, we have the AOA $1 Million Trade Show that's coming up at the Long Beach Convention Center. We have two different events every year, $2 million events every year, and that one would be at the LA Convention Center, usually in the April, kind of in the spring, and then also in the fall we have the one at the Long Beach Convention Center. And anyway, so those of you that are new members, just want to welcome you today, and so glad that you're with us. And also just for those of you that aren't members, yeah, it's just $97 a year to join, so we want to encourage you to join. You have a money-back guarantee on that. Anytime within the first year, you can get a full refund. And really, our goal is to serve you. Our goal is to provide value in a way that makes your property management experience better, that makes it helps you get things done quicker, helps you do things the right way so that it's not costing you money, and hopefully we're providing other resources that will help you just do things more efficiently. And one of the things that we do have is property management software. And so your member account already has tenant screening software, but we do have property management software starting at $15 a month. And it does integrate with your AOA member software as well. And so that's something that we do have. Let's see, what else can I tell you? All right, yeah, that will do it. And just to get to the sponsor now, it's Inland Securities Corporation. They've been in business for over 50 years, and you'll hear a little bit about their history. They've done $4 billion in DSTs over the last 13 years, which is just an incredible amount of money. And and they are uniquely customer first. That's what they really push, and that's the grid for everything that they're doing. And so from Inland Securities, we have our speaker today. He's one of the higher ups there. He's the Western Divisional Director and Senior VP at Inland Securities, and I'm sure he'll share a little bit more about himself. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Charles Jensen.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Always love coming on the Apartment Owners Association webcast here. And I'll start with my business card. This is a QR code, much like a menu. You can download my information, my contact information, which I believe will be scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. And it's a pleasure to be here today. I live in Southern California, live right on the border of Manhattan and Hermosa Beach, not too far from the water there, beautiful area, and been in California for about 10 years. Been inland for going on 16 years now. It's been a great experience. And I'd love to share with you today a little bit about who we are as a company, who Inland is, just for a few minutes. We're going to talk about the basics of 1031 exchange, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Because I know some of you are pros, some of you are your first time at this. Then we're going to talk about the Delaware Statutory Trust, which may be a potential solution for your exchange needs. And we'll keep it very short and sweet. As we're going through this, the title of the presentation, utilizing DSTs in a 1031 exchange, and we're going to explain about how you can exchange with your 1031 exchange into a Delaware statutory trust. Just some housekeeping. Many of you know that a Delaware statutory trust is a security investment. So there is a private placement memorandum. We urge you to read through it. Usually a few hundred pages of good information, goes over some of the risk factors, information about our company and the investment as well. So we always urge you to read through these documents before you decide to invest, because we know that past performance is not indicative of future results. So who is Inland? A lot of people on the call here in California. And when I say the word Inland, I think you automatically have a narrow association thinking about the Inland Empire of California. You think about Rancho Cucamonga or Temecula or wherever you're at. But we're not in the desert. We're started by 4 Chicago teachers in the 60s. These teachers met in teaching school, and they realized they're not going to strike it rich, teaching school necessarily. So they banded together to form a little investment group at their school. And you think about a school in the 60s, the only phone they had access to was the faculty lounge phone, which was tied to a cord on a couch. They couldn't really hide what they're doing. They did their first investment, which was a $4,000 piece of land in between 2 buildings in Chicago. They ended up, after selling this property, getting a construction loan, doubling their initial investment. You can imagine all the teachers around them saying, "Can we invest with you?" So this went on over and over and over again. They had teachers from all over Illinois after a few years, and all over the Midwest after about 5 years. They went full-time into real estate in 1967. And this is important because they had their family, friends' money. They had other teachers' money they're working with. They had a dedication they needed to do toward the real estate, and they had a passion for it as well. In 1968, they incorporated in Oak Brook, Illinois, just a stone's throw from McDonald's original worldwide headquarters. Through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s until today, they branched out. They bought more land, they built apartment buildings, did retail, office, storage, medical, hospitality, you name it. The great part of the story is that these 4 former teachers that came from lower to middle income class families became the biggest owner of Walmart nationwide in 1989. We own the land and the buildings and lease them back to the Walton Family Trust. Best part of the story is, today, we're the 7th largest landowner in the U.S., the 8th largest commercial property owner in the U.S., and one of the top sponsors consistently of Delaware statutory trusts over the last decade plus. And it's a pleasure to be here today talking to you about our company, where we came from, and where we're going. And another great thing, too, is the 4 founders of Inland are still there. One is head of marketing, one is head of acquisitions, one is chief legal counsel, and chairman and CEO. So still there operating in Oak Brook and bringing out great investments for you in general. So we're in 45 states in just about every asset class of real estate you can imagine, and we've branched out over the years. Let's talk about 1031 exchanges. Exchanges have been around since 1921, over 100 years. And to do a 1031 exchange, the benefits are it allows you to defer your taxes on selling investment real estate. They call this a like-kind exchange. What like-kind means is you're selling any property held for investment or business use into any property held for investment or business use. If you do so, you defer all of the taxes on that investment. So you bought a property in California for $100,000 years ago. You sold it for $1 million. You exchange that, defer the taxes. Your full million's working for you. Sell that for $2 million. You defer that. You can do this over and over and over again. You could swap till you drop, defer till you die. And upon death, there's a step up in basis to fair market value. The taxes go away. So this is a great way to preserve wealth. we've always said the 1031 exchange is like the 401k of real estate. Why would you cash in your 401k and pay the taxes? You want to have the money tax deferred and working for you upon retirement. So assuming $1 million property, I want to demonstrate to you what it looks like if you didn't do an exchange and you paid the taxes. Some people don't realize how detrimental this can be. So where it says no exchange in that column, you'll see 4 different taxes in bold. So assuming $1 million with the $100,000 original cost basis adjusted to zero, the recapture on $100,000 could be up to $25,000. So what this is all those fixes, repairs and things like that, the depreciation, the IRS gave you tax benefits. They can recapture up to 25% of that upon the sale and realization of the sale of the property. The federal tax on gain is the largest tax that you'll see at 20%. So $200,000 on the million. Now, state taxes, I always like to show this because if you average all 50 states, the average tax is 5.1%. Now, this is a national presentation. We know in California, we're upwards around 13.3 at the highest tax bracket level, making this closer to $133,000. The Medicare tax, the Obamacare Medicare, that 3.8%, it's applicable to investment properties, is also applicable here. So that'd be $38,000 on the million. So on a national basis, your million might look like $686,000. In California, closer to $600,000. It could be a potential 40% hit. And look at the far right-hand column. With an exchange, you defer your recapture, your federal tax, state tax, and Medicare. Your full million is working for you. Pretty easy to say. Better have $1 million working for you versus $600,000 working for you, especially in your retirement, generating income for your retirement needs. I'd like to show this slide. It's a little funny. The IRS, put the words together. The and IRS, what does it spell? It spells theirs. And our goal at Inland is help you keep more of the money as yours and give less money to the IRS, putting more in your pocket for retirement in general. The qualified intermediary. The qualified intermediary, this is a very important thing. Whenever you sell your property, you cannot take constructive receipt of the funds. The funds have to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. I see it all the time in some of my seminars where people will show up with $3 million that went to their bank account that day. That exchange is blown. The funds have to go to a third-party qualified intermediary. There's many of these that exist out there. Exeter 1031 Exchange in San Diego is excellent. IPX 1031 Exchange, API. I could go on and on and on. A lot of great companies that are out there that do this work, and they charge typically a fee for this. So once the funds go to the qualified intermediary, it starts at clock. You got 45 days to identify your replacement property. This includes the 45 days. This includes weekends and holidays, right? So to include Yom Kippur, Labor Day, it's all inclusive. Saturday, Sunday, it's all there. So day one is when you sell and the funds go to the qualified intermediary, which triggers the 45 days. Then you have 180 days to get it closed, which is cumulative of the 45. Ask yourself, what's harder? Is it harder to find a replacement property in 45 days here in California? Or is it harder to get it closed in 6 months? I'd argue, talk to any realtor. They'll tell you right now, it's harder to find a property in 45 calendar days in California. Reason being is, a lot of people are holding, a year or two ago, 2-3% mortgage rates. Now they're looking at 7.5. They're reluctant to sell, but some people need to sell or something's going on in their lives, and they're selling, and real estate's still in motion. But as people are exchanging right now, they're finding a lack of inventory in the market, right? It's also a little harder to get financing. And today, as we talk about the Delaware Statutory Trust here in a minute, you're going to understand that we're holding properties in inventory. You don't need financing. We're taking care of some of the biggest needs that are existing in today's real estate market. We're holding an inventory, so you pick like a menu, very easy to do. And I hope you enjoy this presentation as we go into the Delaware Statutory Trust. So as I mentioned before, the property has to be considered like kind to be eligible for exchange. It can't be your personal residence unless you move out of it for a couple of years and rent it out, turn it to investment property. So what that means, like kind, what it means is you don't have to go from apartments to apartments or healthcare to healthcare. You can exchange an apartment building into a hospital into self-storage into hospitality. You can exchange into air rights above a building, water rights, mineral rights below a building, right? So anything held for investment or business use is what qualifies in these types of investments. So this is very important to focus on when you look at an exchange. Now, there's something called a Delaware Statutory Trust, which is created in 2004-86 of the Internal Revenue Code. This is a full revenue procedure that allows you to go into a 1031 exchange via a vehicle called the Delaware Statutory Trust. And going to a DST, this is considered like kind by the IRS. It's much like doing a typical exchange. Step number one, you sell your property via your realtor, right? We don't act as realtor. Find a good realtor, sell your property. Step number two, funds go into a qualified intermediary. Step number three, through the help of a financial advisor, the funds get wired into the Delaware Statutory Trust. So a very easy process to do, not much different than your typical exchange that you're doing now. So today we're going to talk about the 6 major reasons people like Delaware Statutory Trust, the reasons that people focus on these investments. And you'll find with these that a lot of people are going to DSTs for safety and quality. In markets like today, with high interest rates, inflation, uncertainty, political risk, a lot of things happening in the market today, the Delaware Statutory Trust will help people navigate some of these murky waters that are out there. And the first way that people navigate these waters is by access to institutional quality properties. Now, there's 6 bullet points we're going to go over. Maybe one or more of these resonates with you. This is not for everyone, but if some of these resonate with you, the Delaware Statutory Trust may be a potential vehicle for your next exchange journey. So what I mean by access to high quality properties and institutional grade properties is, maybe you're selling $100,000, $1 million property in San Diego, for example, right? As you're selling this property, you're looking for probably another $1 million property. It doesn't get you much anymore, right? Well, think about a Delaware Statutory Trust. It's a trust that can hold one or more properties. It has one or more people. The typical DST can go up to 500 investors, right? So imagine we have Jeff's 100,000, we got my $1 million, someone else's $10 million, aggregated together by 500 people. Now we're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. Imagine what you could buy by pulling our funds together. I'll show you some examples here. ESPN, their corporate headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut, is an inland property. It's a Delaware Statutory Trust. FedEx facilities, a lot of those across the nations are DSTs, and we own a lot of them. Amazon facilities, the distribution hubs, some of those are DSTs. It could be student housing facilities, apartment buildings, healthcare, self-storage, hypothetically. Gives you an idea of the types of properties that exist for exchange needs in general. And these are constantly changing throughout the year, every month of the year. The second thing is there's no management responsibilities. Imagine having up to 500 investors. You can't give everyone control and voting rights necessarily, because imagine we paint the apartment building gray, but you want to paint it brown. Well, too bad, right? It's difficult to have everyone's opinion going into one investment. So what happens in a DST is Inland is like the property manager, right? The trustee of the trust. We handle all the day-to-day activities. So one side of the coin, you lose some control of your day-to-day, but the flip side of that, there's always two sides of the coin, is that you're out of the management activities of that property. This is a passive vehicle. You're out of what we call the terrible T's. And what are the terrible T's, you may ask? It's the tenants, the toilets, the trash, the teenagers, the turmoil, termites, tarantulas, whatever's going on in that property, you're no longer dealing with. You're sitting back in a passive vehicle, just collecting the income. So for example, I personally have 3 different Delaware Statutory Trusts at Inland. Every first of the month, I receive a direct deposit from Inland from the rents from the properties, right? In 3 different investments. So first of the month triggers a direct deposit. You can go in any account you want, brokerage account, checking account, whatever you decide. So monthly income, monthly statements, and every quarter you get an update on the property. Here's the new apartment building that went, the new, say, pool that went in, or the new volleyball court or something like that, that went to the property. We'll give you updates on that as far as occupancy as well. The end of the year, we give you a 1099, because clearly you need to report your taxes to the IRS, especially on the income received off the property, typically taxed at ordinary income. So you'll see the example here on this sample informational 1099 that in the top right-hand corner, you see my cursor going over here. This person owns hypothetically 2.7% beneficial interest in a Delaware Statutory Trust. They received rents over the year of $77,808, right? That's the taxable income on the property over the 12 months. But it's offset by the repairs and interest expense and depreciation of $32,694. So instead of paying taxes on the full $77,000, there could be some sheltering where you're only paying on the net income of $41,790 in this hypothetical. So there is some depreciation in a DST. There can be appreciation. Of course, it can go down or remain flat. But the nice thing here is you're not losing, any side of the coin here. You're getting the income and the outcome in a Delaware statutory trust. The next reason people like the DST is for diversification purposes. Clearly, this is not a bank investment. This is not guaranteed. This is not FDIC insured. This is real estate. Can go up, can go down, remain flat. So to mitigate the risk, we can do a diversification strategy to help you keep your income stable as well as keep your value stable. And here's how we do that. Back to the slide. A typical DST could be one FedEx facility, one Amazon facility. It could be one ESPN headquarters. But a lot of times we have a portfolio. So hypothetically, just for example's sake, we might have, say, 5 apartment buildings in Florida in one DST portfolio. Or we might have 5 hospitals in Arizona in one DST portfolio, or 30 self-storage facilities in one DST portfolio. So the nice thing here is you get diversification. Now, something called the 3-property rule in 1031 exchange. The IRS says if you sell your one property, you can identify 3 new properties as you go out into the market. And there's something called the 200% rule. If you want to go beyond 3 properties, say you're selling $1 million property, you can identify $2 million in real estate. So what you could do is take your $1 million sale of a property, put a third of it, $333,000 into those 5 apartments in Florida, take a third and put into that portfolio of 5 hospitals in Arizona, hypothetically, or hypothetically into those 30 storage facilities in Texas. So you just left one property in San Diego, California, and you went into 40 properties in 3 states in 3 asset classes. Ask yourself, are you diversified? I'd argue yes. So the idea there is if one apartment building is having issues, it's not going to take all of your income down. It's not going to take all of your value down. So by diversification, we can mitigate the risk, helping you obtain a more stable investment in a Delaware statutory trust. The next thing is limited personal liability. Exchange law states this: if you sold $1 million property, right, after, and let's say it's $1 million after you paid your realtor, so that's the net proceeds is $1 million. The rule is you have to go back into $1 million in real estate equal or greater. Anything less is taxable. So if you sold $1 million property and you bought an $800,000 replacement property, the $200,000 you did not exchange is considered taxable, or what they call boot in the accounting world. And what's nice about this type of investment is in the DST, you don't need a loan. Let me explain. If you sold $1 million property, back to the same example, and you have leverage on it. So let's say it's $500,000 in a loan, and you have $500,000 in equity equals the capital stack of that $1 million that you're selling in your property. When you sell that property, that loan is paid off, right, to the bank. So you started $1 million, now you're at $500,000, right, which goes into your DST or your up leg, your next investment. What most people have to do is get a loan for the $500,000 to get back to the $1 million. Because if you sold for $1 million net sales proceeds, you have to go back into $1 million net sales proceeds. So in simple terms, if you sold that at 50% loan to value, you need to go back into 50% loan to value equal or greater. You can take on more debt. You can take on, put in more equity out of pocket, but anything less is considered taxable. If you sold for a 25% loan to value, you need to go back into 25% loan to value equal or greater. That makes sense to everyone. So as you can see, everyone is in a different leverage opportunity. Some people have no debt, don't have debt, don't want it, don't need it. Some have 25 or 50 or 75% loan to value. So as a smart company, we like to play chess, not checkers. And what we do is we have DSTs that have different loan to values. The IRS realized back in the day when the 2004-86 revenue procedure was created that it's very difficult to get a loan for up to 500 people. Think about how long would it take, the fees associated, all the things that come into play trying to play mortgage company. So the IRS allows DST sponsors to put one loan on the property. We go out, we buy the property in cash typically, then we provide financing on the property. You, the investor, are allowed to absorb our financing on paper. What am I saying? Is you don't have to go out and get a credit check, get a loan, go through the whole process of appraisal and all that. You can absorb our debt on paper to meet your exchange debt needs to cover your boot, right? Because you're absorbing our debt on paper, it's non-recourse to you, right? It's recourse to Inland, not to you, the investor. But since you're absorbing our debt, we pass on all of the debt benefits of the depreciation to you through that 1099. So this is a neat way to go out and exchange your property without having to obtain financing. This is huge, especially in today's market where it's very difficult to get financing on a property. So here's an example. This is a hypothetical. Relinquished property is what you sold. Replacement is what you're buying. And let's assume the replacement property is an Inland DST. Inland went out and put 38.5% loan to value on a property. So we put financing, our loan, in place there. You, the investor, are relinquishing or selling a property that has a 45% loan to value. So your total investment is 1.1 million. And what do you have to do? Go equal or greater. So in this case, they went a little greater. They went to an Inland DST where we had a loan from a third party at 40.5%. As you can see, they went from 1.1 million in investment up 3.9% to 1.165719. This works. And because they're taking on a little more leverage, they're getting more depreciation. Some people use this as a strategy. Your original cost basis will follow you. This is something you should talk to your accountant about. It doesn't just start over. And so when you go into a Delaware statutory trust, if you want to get more depreciation, more write-off to kind of juice your cash flow and get more tax benefits, you could go into a higher leverage deal if you wanted to. Your 30-year apartment building you've had for 30 years is fully depreciated. It's going to be fully depreciated going to a DST or next investment, but take on 50% loan to value maybe. I'm not promoting it, but I'm saying it's an idea that you can go in and get more write-off against that ordinary income. It's going to juice your yield. So just something to discuss, and it's an idea, but there's a lot of ways to do things. Some of our DSTs have no debt. For people that don't have debt, don't want it, don't need it. Some have maybe 35 or 45, even 70% loan to value sometimes. So you can blend any two DSTs together to get your loan to value. Say we don't have a 25% LTV DST. We don't have a 25% mortgage on any of our deals. What you could do is put half your money into a zero debt DST, half your money into a 50% loan to value DST, average the two, you're at 25%. So it's a great way to blend to get the loan to value you need in your replacement properties in general. Next bullet point is estate planning. Many of you out there have a revocable living trust, probably a smart thing, right? So you don't go into probate upon death. So imagine two scenarios, husband and wife, two kids, and you own an apartment building. You're not doing a DST. So what you're doing through your whole life is you're either managing the property or managing the manager. You never fully retire from the real estate. And upon death, kids get a step up, right? But now what do they own? An apartment building. Are your kids going to agree upon who's going to sell it, at what price to sell it for, who's going to refinance it? You get the idea. Who's going to manage it? Give any two kids, good kids, money and watch them fight. Seen it a million times the last 20 years. So imagine scenario number two. You have this apartment building, two kids, husband and wife. You sell the apartment building. You exchange into a Delaware statutory trust that has hypothetically 5 apartments in Florida. Now you went from 1 apartment to 5. You're diversified. You're getting monthly income that's passive, direct deposited to you. You're out of the management game. You can retire from the real estate. And upon death, your heirs, those two kids, get the same step up to fair market value. The taxes go away. So the neat thing here is the kids aren't having to make decisions on death about the apartment building. They can separate if done correctly through the qualified intermediate at the beginning, and they get their income stream that comes into both of them. And upon the sale of the DST, the kids can exchange again if there's new appreciation after the step up, or they can cash out. But they're on separate journeys and there's no reason for them to fight. So a lot of people use this as an estate planning strategy. At a financial advisor recently, they got a $20 million property and the heirs have four kids. They decided to get 4 DSTs under the 200% rule, and they put a $5 million DST allocated to each of the 4 kids. So upon death, they have an idea where the properties are going to go. So great way just to estate plan and put it out there. Now, the last thing is insurance policy. I like to call this the assurance policy because this is just an idea. This is a conceptual thing. So imagine you're using the 3 property rule. Property number 1, you found something in Southern California. You say, oh, wow, it's a beautiful property in Los Angeles. Well, a lot of times people aren't identifying property 2 and 3 because of the lack of inventory in the market. So imagine this, is you can put property 2 and 3 as a Delaware statutory trust in case your first property falls out of escrow after the 45 days. It's like musical chairs. You can change your identification every day, a day of the 45 days, but come day 46, you're locked in. The music stops. So the DST could provide you as a backup It's free of charge. You got to follow certain rules provided by any financial advisor and their broker dealer, and Inland as well. But it's a great way to back yourself up, or you can split the difference. You got $1 million, put $500,000 into Inland, and a DST, put $500,000 into local property. I don't know if $500,000 even buys you a parking spot anymore here in Southern California. I kind of joke, but you get the idea that it's a nice way to move on from this. So in closing, the DST will give you access to institutional quality properties. You get out of the management game, right? You get diversification. It limits your personal liability. There's no loan needed. Put this into your estate plan. Get out of the management of this, right? Pass it to your heirs easily, or use it as a backup insurance policy for your exchange needs. One thing I want to really drive home today is this, is the DSTs, we go out and buy the properties that go into the Delaware Statutory Trust in advance. We do diligence in advance. If we go to a bank, they have to give their approvals for the loan on the property, right? We then file these with the Securities Exchange Commission, which is a very powerful entity. You got to dot your I's and cross your T's. They don't approve or deny any of these. We get registered through them. This goes out to the financial world. So these financial firms, a lot of them have broker dealers that have to approve each and every Delaware statutory trust. They have an investment committee that thumbs through the prospectus and they come to a vote. But they can't just approve anything. They have to trust but verify. So a lot of them will go to a third-party due diligence company that's impartial to fly out to the properties, kick the tires, give them a full report, sometimes 50 pages worth of the pros and the cons of the deal. And based on information, they will sign or not sign. What I'm getting at is this. We've already bought the property. Due diligence is already done. The loan is in place. This is like going to a restaurant and picking from a menu. You want the steak, you want the chicken, you want the fish. We have different options on that menu of Delaware statutory trusts for you at any given time. And I urge you, if you're thinking about selling a property, if you're in escrow right now, look toward a Delaware statutory trust. You can feel free to reach out to me for a free consultation. I can bring you in with various financial advisors, depending on your location within California, that can help consult you on this process and walk you through. And by the way, Inland's not the only company. I think we're the best company. I'll tell you 100 reasons why. But there's various companies out there. You can blend different companies and different deals to make it work for you. Just I caution you when you're looking at DSTs, don't just look at the income. Look at the quality of the properties. Look at the quality of the sponsor. In real estate, they say it's all about location, location, location. DST world, it's all about the sponsor. So as you're doing this, tread well. If you see really high cash flows out there, ask yourself, how did they get this number? Because the cash flow doesn't always show their health. We can always arrange the numbers according to risks, how conservative or liberal we are in our numbers. I would argue with you that Inland is one of the more conservative companies out there. So don't pay attention to just the yield. Look at the quality of the sponsor and the property in general. So with that, I give it back over to you for any Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Charles, for that. And if you joined us late, Charles Jensen with Inland Securities Corporation, and just sharing about the DST there. And we do have, so if you would like to put a question in, please go ahead and drop that in. I do see that Charles on YouTube has put a question in. DST PPMs will state that DST investments involve substantial risk and investors should be willing to lose their entire investment, and distributions are not assured. How do investors mitigate that risk?
So when you put out a private placement memorandum, this goes out there, we have to disclose everything. There's 50 pages that will tell you about how you can lose. And in the investment world, we're required to put all this out there to you. And I'm not saying don't take it seriously, it's serious, but you can go buy a property and lose everything too. All it's trying to tell you is it's real estate. Anything can happen. So it's no different than you going to buy a property. We're just trying to mitigate those risks through diversification and high quality properties. But what it's telling you is, hey, it's not guaranteed. It can go up, can go down, right? But again, if we're buying high quality properties and diversifying, we hope to mitigate that risk. That's just part of pretty much every private placement memorandum in these types of investments are going to tell you can lose everything. And it's a reality. But the reality is through, again, the risk mitigation, we try to bring those factors down.
Great. Well, thank you, Charles. So the real risk, there's two types of risk, right? One would be, you can think of a lot of actually, but one is if your company fails, that's one risk that people take. But the other one would be if the specific property fails. Would that be like the two biggest risk ones that you could think of?
Yeah, so this is interesting. When you go into a Delaware statutory trust, it's a trust, right? So every DST has its own name. It's they could call it the Florida Delaware Statutory Trust or Texas Delaware Statutory Trust, whatever they want to name it. It has a unique name to it. Now, say it's in Florida, there's hypothetically 5 apartment buildings in there, and say there's a loan. A lot of times they're not going to cross collateralize. It's not one loan for the 5. Each property has its own loan, right? Sometimes they'll put them on the East Coast, West Coast of Florida, depending on hurricanes and where they're going. No one knows, right? But we have insurance for that as well. Again, risk mitigation, right? But the concept here is that each DST has a firewall. It's not a house of cards. It has its own financing, its own name. It's bankruptcy remote. So whatever happens to Inland doesn't necessarily affect the DST. It may be the property manager. So if a bomb hits Inland's headquarters tomorrow, or natural disaster hits our headquarters, something happens, another property manager can step in and take over and manage the property. So what I'm trying to say is they thought about a lot of these risks and trying to mitigate them through creating these firewalls. So if one DST is having issues, doesn't affect the other one because it's in a trust.
Got it. That's good. I think that's really the key one. And, it's uncomfortable to talk about it, but I think talking through it and just hearing your response to that, I think that helps people for sure. All right, Chuck on YouTube. If one has DSTs in different states, does one need to file multiple state tax returns?
Maybe like, I'm Charles, you had a Chuck and a Charles. I like, so we're gonna have a Charles next, right? So here's how it works. Yeah, if you have properties in multiple states, you may have to file, on the income of some of those states, right? My accountant doesn't even blink twice. First year it takes a little extra time. So it's one side, might cost a little extra in your taxes, but again, you get diversification and safety. But notice I mentioned like Florida, for example. Florida doesn't have a state income tax, right? Or Texas or Tennessee or Nevada or Washington State. So there's certain places we look to. But a lot of times too, people are below the thresholds of the tax reporting. So if you're going to a multiple property state, you may be below the threshold. Something to talk to your accountant financial advisor about to see if you qualify for that. But again, if you're in California, it just offsets your taxes. You're not being double taxed to pay in one state and in California. It offsets your California taxes. So it's just a little more accounting work. My accountant, they take notes, and every time you file, it goes in. By the way, these go on Schedule E. The DST goes on Schedule E typically. So for me, 3 different DSTs are Schedule E property A, B, and C. It's plug and play the numbers, right? And so if there are taxes to file, it's usually like a 1-pager. It's something they got to file in another state, depending on the situation. But again, that's the risk benefit analysis, right? It might take a little extra work on your taxes, but you get the diversification and safety.
And you give a report as well. Like what you give at the end of the year is pretty clear for the CPA to be able to take that and put it into the Schedule E, right?
Absolutely. It separates the building, land, improvements, stuff like that. There's multiple pages. I just show the first page of a hypothetical 1099. And the nice thing too is the 1099 comes on time, right? So it's not waiting for it until October. So
great. And then Michael on YouTube as well. Upon my death, do the heirs get a step up in basis in a DST too?
Yes, they do.
Great. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we do it. And I hear you're going somewhere today, huh? Where are you going today? You have a meeting?
Yeah, I'm speaking. I do live events, for educational purposes. We do some in Los Angeles. We do some in Pasadena every month, Beverly Hills every month, Woodland Hills every month, up in Thousand Oaks. We do one in Costa Mesa at Capitol Grill every month. And we do one here in San Diego at Roost Chris in Del Mar. So I'm speaking there directly after. And it's open to the public. It's a free lunch. It's information, education on Delaware statutory trust. We don't go into specific deals, but we go in just to answer questions and talk about 1031 and DST in general.
And, today it's a little too late to get involved on that one. Where can they find the schedule to see if they want to see you in person?
Well, I think is my phone number up right now and my email?
Oh, yes, it is. It is.
Feel free to email me or call me. and we'll send you the schedule. It's a link to a landing page that will give you a way to register in and come to these events. And listen, if you're in the San Diego area today, you're in Del Mar, 11:30, 12 o'clock, if you can show up, come on out.
They even could come now, even if they
come out. Absolutely. There's always room for more if you're selling a property. If you're in the area, Del Mar, Ruth's Chris, 11:30 today. So
cool. Hey, Charles, and I just want to give people, hey, if you got one last question, go ahead. Let's throw it into the chat and we'll get it to them. If not, just remember, San Diego. We had that meeting yesterday, but again, next month, we're meeting just about every month in San Diego. It'll be a double header, and we will be talking about asset protection and also just landlord-tenant law. So those two different seminars, one location, one day. And so we want to invite you out to that. That's going to be October 27th. It's a Friday. So if you can make that, great. And then for those of you in Oakland, next week on the 19th, and then the week after that in Santa Clara on the 26th. And we've had a lot of different live streams, and we're really ramping up for the trade show here. And again, it's a great place to go. I know Charles will be there, and you're probably, I don't know if you're speaking or someone from your team is speaking.
Yeah, we'll be speaking, or someone from our team will be speaking, and we usually have a couple booths there. So come by the Inland booth. We love seeing all of you there. It's such a great trade show, and anything like a partner could want or need is all there under one roof.
Right. So find some new vendors, and meet people face to face, and just kind of get a better idea. It's nice to see them on the AOA Contractors and Vendors website or in the magazine in the Contractors and Vendors part, but it's a whole nother thing to see people in person and just get a better feel. And so there'll be, every show we have, there's at least 150 booths. So come on out. And I don't see any other questions, so we'll call it a wrap for now. And I'll see you next month.
Yeah. Thank you all.
All right. And everybody, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.